Okay, I'm not a lawyer, but this is part 2 of my recap for Take Care of Maya, the first 8 days. So let's get into this potential motion for a mistrial. Context is last week, the family's attorneys say that Maya informed them that while she was at Johns Hopkins All Children's, a man with a doctor's coat came into her room and asked her to take down her bottoms. According to Maya's statement, the doctor looked and then left. The family's attorneys say that Johns Hopkins knew about this incident. Being that the Kowalski family's attorney just learned about this, they would like to add on to the claims that they already have against the hospital for this lawsuit, and they want evidence surrounding this claim to be allowed in to the trial. But the judge says there are a couple issues with that request. Number one, he says adding on a new claim during trial violates due process.
We get down to a fundamental due process issue, which is notice. The whole point of having the pleadings is to explain the conduct that the plaintiffs are accusing the defendants of engaging in so that the defendants can prepare and defend against those. And it's just a simple concept. It's notice.
Secondly, the judge says in cases that include sexual assault, jurors have to be asked their feelings about it.
We did not ask questions of the jurors about assault. That would have been a major focus of individual voir dire by the court and the parties had we known about Maya Kowalski's disclosure. We would have asked those jurors. Some of those jurors may or may not be seated here today, but we wouldn't know and have no way of knowing because we had no opportunity to ask those questions given the late disclosure.
Now, thirdly, the judge says if he were to even allow the testimony or evidence in surrounding this issue, the claim itself is actually criminal.
Assuming that the defense would be able to identify the individual, since what you're alleging is effectively criminal conduct, we're now going to be confronted with a Fifth Amendment invocation, most likely, by the individual who Maya Kowalski would be accusing of this assault.
So with all of that, this is what the judge said.
I'm denying the motion to admit the evidence, and I'm denying the alternative motion to amend the complaint. So at this point, the question is, do the plaintiffs wish to move for a mistrial?
And eventually the family's attorney comes back and they do ask for a mistrial. Kinda. What the attorney asks for is to request the mistrial, but for the judge to not make a ruling on that request until after the trial is over. So he wants to keep going with the trial right now. And then at the end, he wants the judge to decide if it should have been a mistrial. The judge denied that request and denied the motion for the mistrial. And so the day continued on. I told y'all this case it's been wild. So Jack Kowalski came back to the stand and they really started getting into the testimony about the insurance billing records. And if you watch the documentary, you know all about those.
Now let's go down to the diagnostic code. You see that?
You want me to say it?
Yes.
No, complex regional pain syndrome. The provider name is Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
What is the diagnosis code?
Complex regional pain syndrome.
Take that back. Let's just go directly to 2729. What was the charge submitted?
$50,071.
All right. And so who was submitting that?
Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
And the diagnosis code again?
The first one would be complex regional pain syndrome. Receive date?
Yep. Received date?
December 6, 2016.
And who submitted it?
Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
And charge submitted?
$10,005.
And what is the first diagnosis that they put on there for the purposes of billing this?
Complex regional pain syndrome.
Jack Kowalski went through bill after bill after bill after bill, and they all had the billing code as CRPS. Now, what's interesting is that when Maya was discharged from the hospital, the diagnosis was no longer CRPS.
And what does it say the admission diagnosis was?
Fictitious disorder and conversion disorder, Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
All right, so this is upon admission. And so on the discharge diagnosis, what does it say that the discharge diagnosis was?
Discharge diagnosis, fictitious disorder, Munchausen syndrome by proxy, conversion disorder. Friday, January 13th, 2017.
Now, how many days after your wife's death is this?
5 days.
On cross by the hospital's attorneys, it got a little testy between the attorneys and Jack Kowalski, but one of the big points from cross was this next clip. Now, before I play it, remember, one of the claims in this lawsuit is false imprisonment. The family claims that the hospital illegally held them there prior to the court's ruling that Maya had to be sheltered there.
You're not denying to this jury that as of November, after Maya was sheltered by order of the state, in early November, you and your wife had the opportunity to consent for Maya being transferred out of All Children's Hospital, but you and Beata refused.
That is correct. And that wasn't you and Beata. Beata refused.
Just so this is clear, in November, Maya could have left All Children's if Beata had said yes.
She could have, but we weren't going to do it under that diagnosis.
Okay, so that was the synopsis that I have today. I missed a ton, but tried to include what I could. I'll be back next time there are some major updates.